Well, good morning, everybody. How are you today? Still waking up. Okay, fair enough, fair enough. It is early. Let's try one more time. Good morning, everybody. There we go. All right, much better. Okay, coffee's kicking in, or at least you're pretending. That's good. That's a good start. If we haven't met, my name is Matthew. I'm the lead pastor for Good News Church. And I wanted to show you, you've seen these kind of images before. You've seen them if you're on Facebook, if you're on Pinterest, if you're on the internet, you've seen these before. But this one made me laugh out loud while I was by myself. Let's throw it up on the screen. I have enough money to live comfortably for the rest of my life if I die by next Tuesday. Yes, amen. Can I get an amen? Yeah, exactly. That's right. And so last week we started this series that we're calling Feed the Pig. And last week we talked about being a greedy pig, about consuming everything we have, about spending it on ourselves. We talked about the person who's preoccupied with stuff, my stuff, getting more stuff, someone else's stuff. And we said that it's a life focused on having and getting more. We talked about how it's a life really that destroys relationships with other people and then ends up hurting our relationship with God too. And so last week we talked about how do we deal with this? How do we fix this? If we're the greedy pig, what do we need to do? And I don't know if you remember, but basically what we said, if we're the greedy pig, we need to give, give, give. That's kind of the antidote. That was the call to arms last week. That was the call to action. We need to give, 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 give. That was last week. This week, week number 2, we're going to talk about the piggy bank. And today I'm going to tell you the exact opposite of what I told you last week. Last week I told you give, 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 give. This week I'm going to tell you to save, 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 save. And I totally get it. It's like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth. It's like I'm giving you conflicting information, right? And this is the problem with the Bible. Sometimes we begin reading these passages and we say, hey, wait a minute, these conflict. These contradict each other. And so today I'm going to give you a contradictory message from last week, but the problem is the Bible says both. The Bible says give, 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 and it says save, save, save. And there's a tension there. There seems to be a problem there at first glance. Today I'm going to lean into the tension. Today I'm going to make more problems for y'all. Today I'm going to go after the give. Last week was give, give, give. This week's going to be save, save, save. Next Sunday we're going to talk about what do we do with the tension. Is there a way to relieve it? Is there an answer to this, or is it really is the Bible really contradict itself? We'll talk about that next week, okay? Next week, you're going to have to live with tension and problem for an entire week. Last week was give, give, give. Today is save, 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 save. Today I want to address this one big issue. Wise people, if you're taking notes, wise people save money. That's the big item for today. That's the big issue. That's the take home. This is the one line you got to get. Wise people save money. Now, we all know that saving is a good idea. We know it's a good idea. It doesn't mean we do it, right? We know the concept is important. We know the concept is a good one. We know that saving is wise. This is what the Bible says. Proverbs 21:20 says, the wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp down everything they have. Fools gulp down everything that's theirs. This is the point. Anyone who spends all they have is foolish. If you use up everything you have, God calls you a fool. When I use up everything I have, God calls me a fool. So we know saving is important. We know God says we shouldn't consume everything that we have. Yet 70% of Americans, according to Wall Street Journal, 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck because we're gulping down everything that we have. 68% of Americans are unable, according to the Gallup poll, 68% of Americans are unable to cover a $5,000 emergency in their life without borrowing money or charging it, putting it on a credit card. So 68%, 70%, that means that most of us in this room are saying, yep, that's me, we're living paycheck to paycheck. Yep, that's me, we don't have an emergency fund, we don't have anything to lean back on. If there's an emergency, and emergencies will come. If there's an emergency, we're going to have to charge it, we're going to have to borrow money, we're going to have to take out a home equity loan, we're going to have to do something. See, it doesn't take much to have a $5,000 emergency, and you guys know this. Car breaks, it's totaled, you got to go out and get a new car, you got to get it fixed. There's a hospital bill because something happened to you, some sort of emergency. Or maybe you've got an ongoing long-term sickness, and the money just disappears. It's like it's going down the drain. It goes fast. $5,000 is easy to rack up. Maybe you got a leaky roof. You know, in the mornings, it feels like fall all of a sudden. You got that snap in the morning. It's cold. It gets to be super hot during the day, but it's cold in the morning. You know what that means? It means rain's coming. It means snow's coming. It means some of us are going to find out the roof leaks, right? $5,000 to pay for a roof is not exciting bill at all. But it happens because life happens. Or how about a car accident? See, when we live in this position, we're living on the edge. when we don't have, when we're living paycheck to paycheck, when we don't have anything saved up, we're living on the edge. We're hoping that life doesn't happen. But the reality is life does happen. What we're living is life, and emergencies are part of life, and they will happen sooner or later. And when there's no reserve, we're going to have to refinance the house. We're going to have to borrow from a family member. We're going to have to pawn something. We're going to have to do a payday loan. We're going to have to charge it. We're going to have to do something to get the cash that we need. And sadly, when we do that, it only makes things worse, right? We may have dealt with the immediate emergency. Whew, got that off my back. That's a good thing. But sometimes more often than not, we end up in a deeper hole than where we started. It's hard to get out again. The financial hole gets deeper and darker. In fact, for some of us, we are living in deep and dark places financially. And that shouldn't be. How do we get out of that? What do we do about it? The Bible says wise people save money. And what I want you to do is take a look at a story today out of Genesis about saving. Okay, so go ahead and grab a Bible and open up to Genesis 41. If you brought your Bible with you or you grab a Bible from the seat in front of you, Genesis is the first book in the Bible, pretty easy to find. I know you can do it. You don't even need the table of contents. I can guarantee it. Genesis 41. Or if you have your phone with you, go to YouVersion, youversion.com. Type in GEN for Genesis 41. It'll take you to where we are today. Let me give you a little background on Genesis 41. God picked a guy named Abraham. And he said to Abraham, Abraham, I'm going to make you into a great nation. Abraham said, wait a minute, I don't have any kids. God said, that's okay. I can do the impossible. Watch. And eventually, at the age of 100, Abraham had his first kid. His kid's name was Isaac. Isaac had a son. Isaac's boy was Jacob. Jacob had 12 boys. He also had daughters. I mean, this was a big family. I mean, from Abraham, right, there was going to be a great nation. They need to have a lot of kids, right? Can you imagine having 12 boys plus girls? I got 3 kids. That's all I can handle. But Jacob ends up with 12 sons and daughters. And as he looks at his sons, one of Jacob's sons grabs his attention, Joseph. Joseph is the youngest. Joseph is the one that dad just dotes on, just loves more than the other sons. And it's horrible, but all the brothers knew it. They knew that Joseph was the favorite son. And they all got jealous. So from Abraham, there's supposed to be a great nation. They became the nation of Israel, the Jewish people, right? And they're looking, but now Jacob is looking at his son Joseph and saying, Joseph, you're my favorite. You're the best one. And all the other brothers get jealous. And so one day they're out away from home and they have the chance to get rid of Joseph, and they do the unthinkable. They sell their brother, Joseph, into slavery, and he's taken off into Egypt. Man, bad days happen. Life happens. Like I said before, crisis happens to all of us. It comes in all sorts of different flavors, all sorts of different emergencies, but Joseph ends up going from the favorite son in a big family to being now a slave taken into Egypt. The brothers go back to dad and they say, it was horrible, there was this accident, we're sorry, he was killed. And you can imagine dad was just broken up, crying, crushed, destroyed, his favorite son gone. I mean, any of your children, some of us know the horror of bearing one of our own children. And so he mourns for his son that's lost. And so Joseph goes off. But then something amazing happens. Joseph ends up in Egypt as a slave. And then because of no fault of his own, he goes from being a slave, he ends up in prison. And when things can't get worse, right? Sounds like some of our financial crises, right? We think can't get worse, and then there's something else that gets laid on, another bill laid on top of that. But he goes into slavery. He goes from slavery into prison. And while he's in prison, he's a nobody. He's an absolute nobody in Egypt. He's a foreigner, come from a foreign land. He's in prison. Nobody cares about him. And the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, has a dream that disturbs him. And the Pharaoh begins to tell this dream to people and says, can you explain it? Can you explain it? Can you explain it? Nobody can explain it. Word gets around, though, that this young man, Joseph, who's in prison, can explain this dream. And so Joseph is brought before the Pharaoh to explain this dream and this scary dream that the Pharaoh has. And let me read it to you. It's in Genesis 41, starting in verse 15. Pharaoh said to Joseph is brought before the king. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream, and no one can tell me what it means. But I've heard that when you hear a dream, you can explain it. I can do it, Joseph replied to Pharaoh. But God will give to Pharaoh the answer he wants. If If you read the rest of the story, you find out Joseph was a little full of himself, but some time as a slave and now some time in prison has really humbled him. And he says, you know what? God can explain this dream to you, Pharaoh. God can reveal this to you. And so the Pharaoh begins to tell Joseph the dream, and you can read it for yourself. But the Pharaoh begins to explain that he's had this dream about these seven fat cows that come out of the Nile. Can you picture them? Seven big fat cows that come out of the Nile. And then right behind them come 7 skinny cows. And the 7 skinny cows come and they eat the fat cows. I told you it was a scary dream. It was a weird dream. The Pharaoh was bothered by it. What does this mean? Fat cows getting eaten by 7 skinny cows. What is this all about? And the Pharaoh wakes up. Verse 28. Joseph explains the dream. Joseph speaks. He says, God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. God has shown you what's going to happen. There will be 7 years of great abundance. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt. But 7 years of famine will follow them. And then the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. This classic good news, bad news, right? There's going to be some good news, there's going to be some bad news. There's going to be good years and there's going to be bad years. But this sets the stage for 3 important principles for saving that we're going to talk about today. Here's important principle number 1. Saving money is absolutely necessary. If you're filling in the blanks, if you're taking notes, saving money is absolutely necessary. The point needs to be made again. Life is going to happen. There is going to be an emergency. There's going to be a disaster. There's going to be a financial crisis. There's going to be a financial surprise that you didn't see coming. It's going to happen. I don't say this to scare you. I say this to explain reality for us. This is the truth. This is how it unfolds for all of us. And some of us are living through it right now, this kind of financial crisis, a financial surprise that's hard to recover from. Money Magazine says that 78% of family units, so a family unit could be a single if you live by yourself. Family unit could be the 2 of you if you're just the 2 of you, kids are grown and out of the house. Or a family unit could be you and your 12 boys and all your daughters, whatever you got, right? A family unit, according to Money Magazine, 78% of us, of our family units, will have a financial crisis, disaster, within the next 10 years. That's 4 out of 5 of us in this room will have a financial crisis within the next 10 years. And our brains really quickly go, yeah, but it's not going to be me. It's going to be the person sitting next to me, right? I mean, we just kind of roll it off. We just kind of play it off. It's going to be somebody else. It's not going to be me. But the reality is it's going to be us. This is part of life. Life happens. This is what life is like for all of us. It's the reality. The reality is an unexpected major financial crisis really isn't unexpected. It's a part of life. It will happen. When you're in the middle of that financial crisis and you're yelling out, why me? This isn't fair. Oh, it's totally fair. If you're defining fair as equal, really, we all get financial crises. They all come. We all get them. It happens to every single one of us. And so we need to be prepared. At this time, Egypt was wealthy and the land was fertile. They're there along the Nile River. All the silt from the rest of the river gets piled up there. They knew how to collect it. They knew how to distribute it out to the fields. They knew how to grow everything that they wanted. And because of all the food, Egypt as a land was wealthy, was prosperous. People had money. It was good to live there. And in this dream that the Pharaoh has, God is saying, the next 7 years, Pharaoh, are going to rock. You're going to love it. Life is going to be good. There's going to be more food than anybody possibly needs. You're going to live high on the hog for 7 years. But beware. It's going to be followed right behind by 7 years of disaster. 7 years of famine when there won't be enough food. 7 years of death when people will die because there won't be enough food. 7 years of crisis, financial life crisis for everybody. So Pharaoh's got some options at this point, right? He can live. He can rock out for 7 years. Live however he wants. 7 years, buy all the chariots you want. 7 years, add on to the palace. 7 years, build some big pyramids. 7 years, do whatever you want, Pharaoh, and just have a lot of fun and say, you know what? I'll worry about that problem when it comes. Maybe I can borrow money from the next country over. That's what we'll do. So that's option number 1. Or option number 2 is to enjoy the next 7 years of prosperity. Enjoy the next 7 years of good stuff. But also take this time to prepare for the crisis that's going to come. Because crises will come. They always come, right? We just learned 4 out of 5 of us will have a major financial crisis within the next 10 years. Financial crisis will come. Back in 2009, Sports Illustrated they did a write-up on NFL players and what happens to them once they retire. NFL players make millions and millions of dollars while they're playing, right? They're making big money, good money, huge money, crazy amounts of money. And Sports Illustrated figured out that within 2 years of leaving the NFL, whether it's through retirement or being canned, whatever it is, within 2 years of leaving the NFL, 78% of NFL players are bankrupt. 78% of them, after having millions of dollars, 78% of them within 2 years end up bankrupt or in major financial crisis. Man, that's crazy. But then there's guys that live differently. Do you know who Ryan Boyles is? Now, I know most of you don't, because he doesn't play for the Broncos. I get it, right? Ryan Boyles is a receiver for the Detroit Lions, and he caught my attention because Ryan Boyles makes millions. And I read this article that caught my attention. He and his wife decided that rather than living off of the millions, what they would do is they would live off of $60,000 a year. That's pretty average for household income across the United States. And they said instead of living off the millions and buying whatever we want and all of it all at the same time, instead of going and partying, instead of flying around the world and doing everything we ever wanted, they lived off of $60,000 a year and invested the rest. 2 weeks ago, he was cut. 2 weeks ago, he was cut, and suddenly he doesn't have the millions of dollars coming in. He did some numbers, and his financial planner guy kind of did some numbers, and they made an announcement. Because of what he put away during the couple years he played, he has enough to live off of more than $60,000 the rest of his life because he planned ahead for what was coming in the future. I mean, this guy's brilliant. This guy is brilliant. Meanwhile, other NFL players are teasing him, mocking him, telling him he's stupid, right? And now who's stupid? Not him. I mean, the guy is a genius. He was prepared for the future. He expected a financial crisis. He expected a famine to come. Saving is necessary because emergencies are certain. Number 2, saving money is a decision. Saving money is a decision. You don't just fall into it. It doesn't just happen. Knowing about the 7-year crisis, knowing that the 7-year crisis was coming, Joseph lays out a plan for how to avert the crisis. Verse 33. And now let Pharaoh, this is Joseph talking, and now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Remember, Joseph is just a nobody from a foreign land. Joseph is just a nobody who was a slave who got thrown in prison. Joseph is a nobody standing in front of the Pharaoh, standing in front of the king. And it'd be kind of like you getting a phone call from the president, Obama, and he says, "Hey, come on in. I need you to tell me about this dream." You know, you come in and you explain the dream, and you don't really expect this conversation to go anywhere. But Joseph is standing there in front of the Pharaoh. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take a fifth, so 20%. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take a fifth of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. We know we're going to get 7 good years, and then there's going to be 7 bad years. During the 7 good years, let's put a fifth of it away. Let's put 20% of it away. They should collect all of the food of those good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of the Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by famine. Joseph's plan was really simple. Joseph's plan was this: save, 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 right? I mean, that was his plan. Save, save, save. He had urgency. He had intentionality. They knew what was coming, and so they knew they needed to prepare for that day. See, if we believed what was coming our way, if we believed the stats that I just told you, if we really believed it, we would save, 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 save. But again, most of us think, oh, not me. It's going to be somebody else. Not me. It's going to be the person sitting next to me. Notice Joseph was urgent about this. Notice that he was intentional. He didn't just say, we'll just save a little bit here and there over the next couple of years and hope it works out. He didn't just say, if there's anything left over at the end of the month, we'll maybe put that away, He said, no, we got to make a plan. We've got a plan for this. He had a decision. He made a decision, and he was specific, 20%. Egypt needs an emergency fund. We know that emergency's coming. We need an emergency fund. We need to be ready for it. See, savings doesn't just happen by accident. We need a plan. A plan is called a budget. That's your emergency savings plan. It's called a budget. A budget is a simple tool to tell your money where to go, to tell your money what to do. It puts you in charge of your money, so you never have to say those horrible words. I just don't know where all our money went. If you can say those words, if you ever find yourself saying those words, I just don't know where all our money went, that's a red flag. That's a huge red flag to say that I'm not doing a good job taking care of the resources God gave me. Now, I totally get it. In this room, we've got some people who God has given a lot of resources. And in this room, we have some people who God has given very little resources. But however much you have, however little you have, you need to take care of it. You need to use it well. You need to be, the biblical word is a good steward of whatever it is God has given you. And this budget idea is for all of us, regardless of how much or how little money we make. This is what Larry Burkett says. Larry Burkett says, a budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. Some of us need a budget because we wonder where our money went. Saving money is a decision. It is making a plan and sticking to it. It's setting some boundaries and saying, I'm going to live by these boundaries regardless of what happens. Even when, football season starts and you think, man, I need that new 90,000-inch Jumbotron in my living room because I got to watch all the games, right? There's always something fun to spend your money on. Yes, having a budget and making a plan and sticking to it, setting some boundaries, means that even when the new 2016 cars come out, we don't just run out and grab whatever we want, but instead we say, is this within my budget? Is this within my ability? Is this within my boundaries? Man, it would be fun to go out to dinner every single night and not have to cook, especially not have to do the dishes. That's the part I dislike the most. It'd be great to just go out to dinner every single night. But no, I can't. My budget won't allow for it. I need to tell my money where to go rather than it just disappearing, right? There will always be something fun in your life. There will always be something to spend your money on. There will always be something to keep you from saving your money. Definition of maturity, here it is. Definition of maturity by Dave Ramsey is the ability to delay pleasure. Children do what feels good. Adults develop a plan and follow through. One of the defining lines between being a kid, being a child, being immature, and being an adult is making a plan and sticking to it. We need a budget. And please forgive me. If you just read between the lines, some of you realize what just happened there. I just called you immature. Forgive me. But when we don't have a plan for how we're going to spend and how we're going to save, we are acting immaturely. We're acting like a little kid. We need a plan. So number 2, saving money is a decision. Number 3, saving money protects your family and those around you. Saving money protects your family and those around you. Pharaoh liked Joseph's plan so much that he says, you know what, Joseph? You are the man. We need someone to be in charge of this project. You're going to be the guy. And Joseph goes to being second in charge in all of Egypt. He just went from the jailhouse to the penthouse, just like that, right? And suddenly he's second in charge. Only King Pharaoh is higher than him. And so Joseph goes to work on this plan. Verse 48, Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored it in the cities. In each city, he put the food grown in the fields surrounding it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. You'd look into these warehouses, and there'd be so much grain, it'd be like the beach, right? It would just be like the sands on the shore of the ocean, like the sand of the sea. In fact, there was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. So much food. Where did it all come from? Joseph saves up 20% for 7 years, and he gets so much he stops counting how much it is. And it's amazing to me how when you save up a little bit over time, it quickly becomes more than you expected, more than you need. It creates a large surplus, and that's what happened with Joseph. That's what happened in Egypt. In fact, as he saved up 20% over 7 years, it became more than Egypt needed for those 7 years of famine. Now, you start doing the math, and this doesn't quite work out. Let's see. So they lived off of 80%, and that was enough to get them by for the 7 years of good years. And they only put away 20%. But when they stockpiled the 20%, it became enough to carry them through the next 7 years. And this is true in savings today with us too. When we put away some today, it will be more than enough for what we need in the future. The problem is most of us don't put anything away today for tomorrow, for the future. They put away 20% for 7 years, and it fed 100% of the country in the 7 years of famine. In fact, there was so much food that other countries, which were affected by the famine all around them, started coming to Egypt and saying, we need help, we need food, can we buy food from you, because you're the only ones who have food. And so other countries came to Egypt and started asking for food. In fact, one of the people that came to Egypt to ask for food were Joseph's brothers and family. The same guys who had sold him off into slavery. They come to Pharaoh, they come to Joseph, not recognizing who Joseph was or not knowing who he is, and ask for food from him, from their brother they sold into slavery. And I'm not going to tell you how that story ends. You got to read it for yourself. That's for another day. But other people start coming to them for help. Other people start coming to Joseph and to Pharaoh for help. It's a great example of how saving money protects you, protects your family, and helps those around you. So let me wrap up by giving you 3 action steps. What do we do? What do we do with this story? Here's action step number 1. Make the decision today to save money. Make the decision today. Not, oh, Pastor Matthew, that was a good little story. Oh, Pastor Matthew, that was great. No, make the decision. Right now is the moment for you to decide. Am I going to do something with this? Or am I going to just have wasted my morning and walk out of here same as before? Make the decision today to start saving money. Being a saver is biblical, and it's just plain smart. Proverbs 13:22 says, a good man leaves an inheritance for his children. A good man leaves an inheritance for his children. In other words, it's unbiblical to spend everything on ourselves. It's unbiblical to spend every dime that we have. We have a responsibility to turn back the tide of debt, to turn back the tide of selfishness, to turn back the tide of wastefulness, of consumerism that leads so many families into ruin. We need to stop it. Financial stress is what we walk into when we spend everything that we have. Crisis is what we walk into when we spend everything. In fact, families end up in ruin over it. Leaving an inheritance isn't just about leaving some cash in a bank account for your kids when you go, though. Although that would be nice, wouldn't it? I mean, your kids would appreciate it. But it's more than just the financial gift that you give them. It's also about investing in your children and modeling to your children the financial principles found in the Bible. And we can't tell them what to do. You know, we can't, that old saying, do as I say, not as I do. That doesn't fly, and we know it. If you're a parent, whether your kids are very young, you got little infants, or whether your kids are grown and out of the house and they got kids of their own, we need to financially set an example for our kids to give them an inheritance. I think about my son Elijah, who's 15. Just started his first job. He's working at Heidi's Deli, right, just over here on Miramonte and Wadsworth. And so he's 15 years old. It's a perfect job for a 15-year-old, right? He can ride his bike from our house over there. He gets paid, like minimum wage, but he gets paid, and he gets tips. That's pretty good. That's actually really good. And then on top of that, at the end of every shift, they give him a free sandwich. He can make his own sandwich to take home. He's like, because he's a 15-year-old boy, he's like, I don't really care about the money. Just give me the sandwich, right? We're joking. This is his love language right here. It's not about the money. It's about the food. But this job is perfect for him, and he's loving it. Learn responsibility from it, all these good things. But he and I sat down and we started talking. What are you going to do with all your money? And he starts throwing out some ideas. We talked about how he wants a car and all this other kind of stuff. And so this is his plan. This is his savings plan. He's putting away every single check, the paycheck, the whole paycheck, into a savings account. He's only living off the tips. He's only playing with the tips that he's got. He's only spending the tips. And then he's eating every single sandwich he gets too, by the way. But he's putting away the money. And he's learning what it is to save. He's only spending the tips. This is an inheritance for my son. If he can learn this now at the age of 15, imagine the crises that will be averted in the rest of his life. That's beautiful. That's an inheritance for our kids. He gets it. Leaving an inheritance is also putting together something called a will. Now, you know, a will is planning for the day you die. Nobody wants to think about the day you die, right? That's kind of a morbid thing. Don't want to talk about that, Matthew. In fact, 55% of Americans don't want to think about it. 55% of adult Americans don't have any kind of will or plan for after they pass. It means that if you don't have a will, it means the state gets to decide what to do with your stuff. Now, some of us, we walk into this out of ignorance. We think, oh, I don't have much, it's no big deal. But if you've got kids who aren't at the age of 18, if they're minors, and you don't have a will, they don't automatically go to your brother or sister. Those kids don't automatically become especially when there's marriages and there isn't official adoptions with the kids. It doesn't always mean the state could choose to put your child with somebody else, including the foster care system, or including that crazy aunt that you really don't like and you don't want your kids to live with, right? And so we do silly things. And some of us, we've got estates that we don't think are worth much, but when you start adding up the house or the land or the other things that you've accumulated over time, it becomes a lot of money. And we need to make a plan for what we're going to do with those things after we pass. The last funeral that I did, Dad passed away, extended family. There's this little bit of rumbling going on within the family. And the question becomes, did Dad make a plan? Are things covered? Did he have a will? Did he give his family the directions on what to do? See, when you lay out a will, it's a gift to the rest of your family. It's leaving an inheritance to your children, a wise inheritance. And so we need to give our family the gift of a well-thought-out will. And Good News wants to help with this. That's why we have this estate planning seminar coming up next Sunday. Next Sunday is the 27th. It's going to be in the afternoon, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going to do it right here in this room. And what you need to know is that we as a church, we are not getting anything from this. We as a church, we are paying for this estate planning seminar for you, as a gift for you, so you can make good plans, good financial plans for you, your family, and your kids, an inheritance for your children. And so what we'll do in the estate planning seminar is by the way, number one, it's free, and yes, please invite friends, family, relatives, whoever, because whether it's just me and my wife sitting here at this estate planning seminar, or whether everybody from the entire church comes, we've already paid for the seminar. We've already paid for the cost of it, so everybody needs to come. Please, 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 please. Let me say it again, please. We already spent the money. Come, okay? It's going to be next Sunday. What we'll do is he'll walk through why you need a will. If you have kids, how do you choose a guardian for them, and how do you spell that out? And how to choose an executor for your will, the person who's responsible, instead of the state, who's the person who's going to be responsible for making sure everything gets to who it needs to go to, who you wanted it to go to. See, the mistake that a lot of us make is we just assume we don't have much, it's not a big deal, it's going to go to the people I want. It doesn't normally work that way. In fact, I've done so many funerals, and I've been involved in so many behind-the-scenes conversations with families who were so upset because mom didn't take care of stuff, because dad didn't take care of stuff, and people are at each other's throats. And we're not just talking people who have had a very long life. We're also talking about 30-year-olds. The biggest argument that I've had behind the scenes at a funeral was over a 30-year-old who didn't lay out what to do with the kids. These things need to get squared away. You need to square them away now. And when I say that, I'm not just pointing the finger at you. I'm pointing the finger at me. My wife and I, we don't have this set up. And so very selfishly, if no one else comes to this estate planning seminar, me and my wife, we will be here to get this squared away in our life. The way it works is on Sunday he's going to do the explanation, and then what we'll do is we'll set you up, if you want, we'll set you up, we've already paid for it, we'll set you up with an hour of coaching to help you lay out the particulars for what you need for you and your family. We'll set you up with an hour of coaching for free, and during that hour of coaching, you'll be able to lay out your will and everything that you need to do for it. The last piece then, if you choose to do it, would be to take that to an attorney, because an attorney has to do the final signing off on it. And so what's happening, though, this gift that the church is investing in for you is to get you squared up with 80% of the project done and paid for. You need to come next Sunday. Next Sunday at 3 o'clock. Please mark it on your connection card if you're going to come, because we're going to have some snacks and coffee and that kind of stuff. We're also going to have child care. If you need kid care, please plan on coming. And mark on your card that you need child care. We'll get you set up and taken care of. That's going to be next Sunday, okay? So we'll set you up. Everything all done. Okay, enough with that. So number one, make the decision today to save money. Number two, make a plan today to save money. So make the decision, and then we need to make the plan. If you don't have one, you need a budget, like we were talking about before. Tell your money where to go so it doesn't tell you where to go. Like Joseph, who made a budget, we need a budget. We need a plan that will allow us to deal with our money today and tomorrow. And this is the deal. If you don't have a budget, if you're not using one, let me rephrase it. Some of us have a budget, right? We've written it out, and it's beautiful. It's perfect. Maybe you even have it up on Excel, and it's just gorgeous, and you could print it out, but you never use it, right? Some of us have those kinds of plans. If you're not using a budget right now, and you need tools to lay one out, you need tools to use a budget, would you mark on your connection card, budget, and we will email you tools to set up a budget And I want to send you to a blog that I just stumbled across recently that is awesome on getting me going on using my budget and using the plan and following the plan. So I want to share these details with you. So on your connection card, make sure we've got your email address and write on there. Really, there's not a box for it, but write on there. Really, draw your own box, right? Draw a big box, write budget on there, and I'll send you all these good tools for laying out a budget. Because we need to decide we're going to have a plan, and then we need to follow through, and we need to make the plan. We need to make a plan to save money, and we'll email you those budgeting tools. Number 3, make a habit starting today to save money. Make a habit today of start saving money. Maybe you're thinking, you know what, Pastor Matthew, this saving money stuff makes sense. I get it. It's wise. It's biblical. Joseph did it. I should do it. Blah, 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 right? And then we think about our bank account. We think, it's a good idea, but I don't think I have anything to do. I don't think I have any money I could put away. I don't think I could do this. Remember, most of us are living paycheck to paycheck. And so we very quickly say, you know what, Pastor Matthew, it would be impossible for me to save anything. I totally get it, good idea, but it'd be impossible for me to save anything. You know what? I've seen those Mission Impossible movies, though, right? Right? And when it seems impossible, from a new advantage, from a different direction, they come up with something that I wasn't thinking of, and they get it done. They make the impossible possible. Let me give you an idea of what saving could look like. If you're saying it's impossible for me, I can't do it, it is possible. Instead of deciding you're going to put away $1,000 a month or $500 a month or whatever number comes into mind, do this. Put away $5 a day. $5 a day. You could put away $5 a day. It doesn't matter how much you make. Even if you're making minimum wage, you can figure out a way to put away $5 a day. I know. It's going to be a bummer. It's going to cut into your triple frappuccino, 2-sleeve, hot whipped mocha Starbucks that you get, right? Whatever it is that special drink is that you love, it's going to cut into something like that. I totally get it. But you could pay yourself $5 a day. You could put away $5 a day. Every single one of us could. We just have to decide if we're going to or if we're going to put it off for another day and continue to tell ourselves, not my worry. Financial crisis is going to happen to somebody else because I'm 5. You're all the 4 out of 5. I'm the 5, right? Or we say, you know what? I probably am going to be the 4, and I need to start putting away $5 a day. I can do this. I can make this a habit. You can do this. I imagine it wasn't easy for those Egyptian farmers to hand over 20% of their crops. And I know it'll be hard to put away $5 a day for every single one of us, but you can do this. I know you can. If you start small and build the habit of savings, over time it'll become easy and there'll be great payoff. It means less stress in life. Sounds good to me, right? Less stress is always a good thing. It means more margin to absorb the emergencies. And we need margin in our lives. See, most of us end up in those critical places because there is no margin left. We've eaten into it. We need to make margin in our lives. Better position to help others. See, when you've got money saved, you're in a better position to help others. You never see poor people helping poor people because they don't have anything to give. But you see God using people who have some margin. I'm not saying uber rich, but when we have some margin in life, when we have some savings, God can then use us in the lives of other people. And the last great payoff is better opportunities to be generous. It's really fun to be in a position to be generous, to be able to take care of somebody else. Bottom line, wise people save money. Like I told you, today we're going to talk about save, save, save. Last week was give, give, give. Today is save, save, save. Next week we'll see if we can do something with that tension and if we can do something about this collision that doesn't seem to fit together. I'll give you a hint. It does fit together. Just like every so-called contradiction in the Bible, when you take the time to start reading, you realize these fit together perfectly. They're complementary, not contradictory. And we'll talk about that next week. Let me pray for us, though. Pray that we would save, save, save. Pray that we would be wise, that we would be people who are wise and save money. God, we do ask that you would change the way we think about money. So many of us are so quick to use it all up. So many of us are so quick to find things to spend it on. So many of us are so quick it just disappears so quickly. And God, the reality is so many of us are so foolish with our money. But God, what we're asking this morning is that you would change the way we think about money. Would you change the way we think about savings? Would you change the way we deal with our money? And when you start some new habits in us, ones that please you, ones that bring you glory and honor, ones that new habits that show that we really do trust you rather than ourselves to take care of us. God, we want to be people who are obedient and do what you ask us to do, and you've told us that we need to be wise, we need to save. So God, I pray for each family unit in this room, for each person in this room, single, couples, families with 12 sons and a bunch of daughters. God, we pray that we would, in the way we live and the way we use our finances, that we would honor you, that we would use the resources you've given us wisely. God, we ask this in Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen.